All right, I think I'm on. Um, Perfect. Yeah, I think this is working. So, what's going on, everyone? Today, I'm going to talk about Tokyo Vice Episode 7, deep dive, and kind of go through everything that happened in the episode. Crazy episode. This is for Season 2, by the way. Real quick, I'm Chenny Britt. I'm one half of the Winter Hill Warriors. If you're new here, me and my boy Damon run this channel. We cover a lot of different shows and movies and stuff like that. I'm doing Tokyo Vice solo, so you guys are riding out with me today. But without further ado, man, let's just go right into this. We start episode 7 with Jake going home to Missouri, which obviously is pretty cool because the entire season, even in season 1, we get an idea of Jake's relationship with his family. We know his sister's got some mental health issues, stuff like that. And Jake seems like he wants nothing to do with his family, but it seems like his family is pretty loving. For some reason, Jake just wanted to run to Japan, and we know he lives in Missouri, so maybe Jake just like doesn't want to keep staying in a small town type of vibe, right? But anyways, Jake goes back home to Missouri for his dad's 60th birthday. We see his sister pick him up at the airport. She really loves Jake. Um, she's still in high school right now, and she tells Jake when she picks him up, "Hey, like I have a school project for the my journalism club, and I was hoping to be able to interview you for the club." And Jake's like, "Yeah, no problem." So everything seems like it's good, right? At first, and we do get a little bit of an insight onto like the family dynamics and stuff like that. She talks about their dad and how their dad doesn't really believe in depression. That's kind of a generational thing. Like if any of you guys have friends that suffer depression, oftentimes like I'll hear from those friends that when they talk about depression with their parents are usually like, "I don't get it. Like, what are you so depressed about? Why can we solve it?" And sometimes you can be depressed and it can be caused by a concrete thing that if you get rid of then you're good. Other times it's just a chemical imbalance, man. So I don't really know. I'm not a doctor. I don't have a take on it. But she obviously and her dad don't see eye to eye necessarily when it comes to her depression. So a little bit of an insight. It's cool to actually see Jake's family for the first time. Meanwhile, we cut back to Sato, and him and Sam have just banged, and they've rebounded together, and they're kind of just having some like post-sex pillow talk, and Sam is asking about Sato's younger brother Kaito, and Sato's basically just saying, "Hey, he's worried about Kaito, worried that Hayama has him in too deep. Kaito's a good kid. He's supposed to be the kid who's in school, getting his degree, stuff like that." So Sato's like, "I gotta find a way to get my younger brother out because I promised my mom that I wasn't gonna let him get into this life." Meanwhile, on Sam's end, she's got to find a way to get the club running again. She doesn't really have much money saved up. She's got to find a way to get the club running. They just had a murder at the club, so obviously she's not going to be able to run anything for the time being. And she's responsible for a lot of the girls that work at the club. So they both got their issues that they have to tackle. Sato, sorry, I keep calling him Saito. Sato goes to Ashida's funeral, and a lot of the different Yakuza families pull up. And Ashida was a very respected guy, and you see that by the massive attendance. But during the funeral, we actually get some insight from some other Yakuza members of other families, kind of talking about what's gonna happen now. And we see these two guys talking, and they're basically saying, "Look, man, Ashida, he kept things stable. With him out of the way now, who's going to take control of the Chiharakai, right? They know that Hayama is a loose fucking cannon. So him as Oyabon and the leader of the Chiharakai is not good for anyone." At the same time, there's this dude named Tanaka who, like, I don't remember what his role is, but he's pretty high up, and like he's gonna be responsible for kind of selecting who the new Oyabun of Chiharakai is. But these two guys are also talking about Tozawa as well. Like the secret is not really a secret. Everyone in the know knows that Tozawa is the one who called the hit on Ashida. So Tozawa killed Ashida essentially, right? And these guys know, look, Tozawa is gaining a lot of power, right? He's getting a lot of members to be on his side. So they're going to have to bend their knee to Tozawa at some point or else risk getting fucking murdered just like Ashita was. So there's a lot of talk amongst the families right now, but everyone knows that Tozawa is starting to become the head dude in charge. And Tozawa is a fucking bastard, and he actually shows up to Ashita's funeral, which is so disrespectful. And we see this tense exchange between him and Hayama, right? Now, I think what Tozawa does here is super interesting. He knows Hayama is a fucking hothead with zero strategy behind anything he does. He's just all about action, and he's a crazy motherfucker. So Tozawa actually manipulates him, right? Tozawa wants Hayama to do something rash and to strike back because I think Tozawa has the police force in his pocket. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Like, he's definitely got a mole in the police force. So Tozawa was basically trying to go legit and get away from like small petty crimes and drug dealing and extortion and stuff like that. And a better way for him to continue to gain power is to make sure his enemies within the Yakuza are either killed or sent to prison, right? Like that's how Tozawa is going to conquer and take over. So what Tozawa does is he kind of patronizes Hayama. He goes up and he says, hey, yeah, like, I know you want to be rash, but it's better to act very calmly. And you know Hayama, right? Hayama's the type of dude where if you tell him not to do something, he's going to want to do it just to give a fuck you back, right? So what does Hayama do? Hayama fucking takes that, gets extremely pissed and says, take your fucking hand off me before I rip out your throat. And all of a sudden, what Tozawa wanted to do in terms of planting that seed, it's already done. We know Hayama is going to do something fucking rash later on in the episode. So all Tozawa had to do was show up and say a few words, and he successfully manipulated Hayama into doing something really stupid. And then we cut to an internal meeting between the Chihara Kai, and Hayama is running things right now, right? He's not technically the Oyaban yet, but because Oyaban is dead and Hayama was the number 2, like, everybody's got to report to him. And we see that Hayama rules through fear. Like, this is not an open discussion. Everyone's really quiet. Everyone's scared of Hayama because they know he's a fucking psycho. So Hayama wants to strike back, and he asks Sato, who is technically Hayama's number 2, what does he think? And Sato actually gives his honest opinion. He says, look, even if we know Tozawa killed Ashita, there's no evidence pointing to that right now. So if there's no evidence pointing to Tozawa killing Ashita, then we can't strike back at Tozawa right now because it would just look really bad. All of the other families, the Yakuza families, would then have a reason to band together against us. So we would be isolating ourselves if that's the case. But that only pisses off Hayama, and he's like, does anyone agree with what Sato says? Obviously, nobody's going to speak up because they're terrified of Hayama, so no one says a thing. And then Hayama says, look, we're going to strike back. And then he gives Sato a warning, and he's basically like, are you going to go against me? Like, are you on my side? And Sato kind of says, yeah, I'm on your side. Sato's in a terrible position right now. Meanwhile, Samantha, right, she is caught lying to the police, but she hasn't really committed any crimes. But basically, the last episode, an article aired in the paper basically connecting Samantha to the shooting at the club. She's the club owner, right? So her picture gets broadcast, and now everyone is like, holy shit, because she is a white lady, right? Anyways, Katagiri and the superintendent Nagata pull up to Samantha, and they're like, look, like, we know you knew more about the murders than you're letting on. Why didn't you tell us about the tattoos of the shooters? You definitely saw the shooters' tattoos. Why didn't you tell us? And Samantha's like, look, it was, I was really, anxious. A murder just happened, blah, blah, blah. They know she's kind of bullshitting, but she has told them what she knows. And, she's not under investigation. So they can be mad at Samantha, but she's not really in any trouble. But Katagiri does tell her, look, you're not allowed to really leave the city unless you tell us first, right? And Samantha has no plans to leave the city, so it doesn't really matter. All right, back to Missouri. I actually love this episode for Jake personally. Jake can be an annoying fucking character. I've seen a lot of people in the subreddit get mad at Jake's storyline, and I understand Jake is petulant, but it's important to know, like, in this story, Jake is supposed to be like 21 or something. So I don't know about you, but I was a fucking asshole when I was 21. I'm arguably an asshole right now. So Jake being an asshole at 21, being like annoying, like, dude, that's just called being a 21-year-old. But anyways, Jake pulls back to his house in Missouri where they're kind of setting up for his dad's 60th, and we get a glimpse of Jake's mom, and she seems like a pretty nice woman, like, she's kind of just giving him some shit like, hey, you look thin. That's what parents do. Actually, that's not what Asian parents do. When I go home to my parents, my mom's like, you look fat as fuck. So, it's the white mom is like, hey, you look thin, you got to eat. Sushi's not enough. But anyways, just thought it was an interesting little scene to illustrate like how their family is. So far, his family seems pretty fucking chill. Then we see Jake's dad. Jake's dad seems like a pretty nice guy. He's setting up decorations for the backyard party, and they have this like, heartwarming hug. Like, nothing seems wrong right now. Like, Jake's family seems like a pretty dope fucking family right now. All right. He goes back into the house to go take a shower. We actually find out that Jake's real name is Josh. So his mom slips up and calls him Josh, and Jake's like, no, my name's Jake. So it looks like Jake, hated Missouri so much because he just wanted something bigger and better. He didn't want to feel stuck in this small town, that he came up with a whole new identity for himself. Instead of going by Josh Adelstein, which is his real name, he goes by Jake Adelstein. That's like his new identity. That's what he wants to become. And so he goes upstairs in his room, and we kind of like, I love these scenes in TV shows and movies whenever we get a glimpse of your bedroom, because it just says so much about like who you are as a person, right? Like what you have in your childhood bedroom. And we see that Jake was a smart kid, man. Like there's a quick, like, I actually blew up this screenshot, but right here we see that Joshua Adelstein, got a first place award for acting, right? So talented kid, smart kid, was always a thinker, always read a lot of books. Like, makes a lot of sense when you think about what Jake is and what he actually does, right? Back in Tokyo, though, Misaki is pretty fucked, right? She got caught walking out of Jake's apartment by one of Tozawa's like lieutenants and shit. So she's just kind of like sitting in this apartment, and one of Tozawa's lieutenants says, hey, look, you got to sign this thing for Tozawa. And we don't know what she is signing, maybe some documents of ownership, whatever. But if she doesn't sign, then this dude's basically like, I'll tell Tozawa like that you were out with Jake, right? So she's fucked, and she's basically got to sign. There's nothing else that she can do. So she's got to sign right here. I don't know what this is. If anyone knows Japanese and they can kind of read what that is, definitely post it in the chat or post it as a comment, because I'd love to know. But she's forced to sign something. She's either signing something to take over ownership, or she's signing ownership away. But either way, like, this is really bad, because if she's signing ownership of something, then Tozawa could kind of plant evidence on her, right? Like, if, let's say there's guns used in the shooting and whatever, they're found at a place, and the place happens to have her name, like the apartment happens to have her name on it, then she's going to be liable for that. So she's basically signing away her freedom with this signature. Back at the police station, last episode ended with one of the two shooters finding Katagiri at his house and being like, you gotta help me. And when we get a closer glimpse at the shooter, we actually learn, hey, this is the shooter where, like, I forget which episode it was, but earlier in the season, when they're first conducting the police raids, Tozawa's chasing down one of the Yakuza members who's running away, and they get into a tussle, and Tozawa loses the fight, and he's basically like on the ground, and the dude's pointing the gun at him and could have killed Tozawa. Katagiri could have killed Katagiri. Katagiri had no backup, so he was basically fucked, and the dude decided, I'm not going to kill Katagiri, and he just runs off. Turns out that this is the guy. So this is the dude that actually spared Katagiri's life. He's also the same dude who was part of the duo that killed Ishida, right? So Katagiri has him now. He has him in the interrogation room, and he's basically just like, yo, why didn't you shoot me when you had a chance? And this dude says, I'm not a killer. And Katagiri's like, but you killed Ishida. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And the guy's response is like, look, I had no choice but to kill Ishida because of the raids that you and Nagata conducted on our family. We have no work. I can't get a regular job. So I had no way to pay my bills, no way to get food, no way to feed myself. So Tozawa came to us and he said, look, kill Ishida. I'll give you enough money to leave this life forever. Now, we know that Tozawa can't leave any loose ends. As soon as they killed Ishida, Tozawa sent guys to fucking kill them, right? That's just how this shit goes. So he didn't end up getting any money, and he killed Ishida for basically no reason. And he's here to basically ask for immunity. He's like, look, I'll tell you where the guns are. I'll tell you about everything that we did, and I'll even basically testify. Give me witness protection. And Katagiri's like, dude, this ain't the U.S. There's no witness protection, all right? You guys caused 4 people to die. I think that's what it is. You guys caused 4 people to die in that club shooting. Like, that's enough to give you the death penalty. The best I can do is get you down to a manslaughter charge. That's the best that I can do. And at first, the dude was like, manslaughter? I can't do 20 years, right? Because manslaughter would get him 20 years. But Katagiri's like, bro, you're either getting 20 years or you're going to die. Hey, look, if anyone gets that choice, man, you got to pick the 20, right? You don't really have a choice. So this dude is pretty fucked, but he's got to testify. Now, he does give up great information, right? So Katagiri does go and find the gun that was used in the shooting, which is now huge. That's no pun intended, a smoking gun, right? That's the evidence. So that can be used now to build a murder case against Tozawa and put him out of commission. He tells Nagata, which Nagata is kind of getting fucking sketch, right? So he tells Nagata, look, we found the gun and we got it, right? And Nagata's like, cool. We talked to the DA, and then DA agreed to drop these charges to manslaughter. So by all intents and purposes, the deal with the shooter is now made. They're building their case. They're building their case against Tozawa up. What could go wrong, right? They got to take the shooter to the courthouse to get the statement. But the problem is there's a fucking mole in the police force, and I'm starting to feel like it's Nagata, right? Like it's kind of obvious that it's Nagata, but it could be someone else. But my gut says it's Nagata. Maybe I'm wrong. And Katagiri is sketched out, right? Because like he knows not to trust anyone, so he even says like, look, like let's not tell anybody about this shit. Let's just drive the witness ourselves, right? But here's the thing: if it's just you and fucking Nagata driving the witness, right? If something were to happen, then only one of 2 people could be the snitch, right? The mole. And we know it's not Katagiri. So, I mean, what does that tell you, right? Anyways, flashback, or let's jump back to Missouri. The party's going down, right, for Jake's dad's 60th. And we actually find out, I think his dad is a coroner, right? But he's a pretty successful dude. So he's just kind of like, you know, interacting with some of the other people at the party. They're all like 60-ish, you know, around that age. Like a lot of these dudes have done pretty well in their career. They're pretty successful. Old white dudes, right? And at the party, like everyone knows Jake's story. Everyone knows that Jake, formerly known as Joshua, didn't want to stay in Missouri, so he's in Japan. So everyone's kind of talking to Jake, but Jake is a charming dude, right? He immediately starts kind of running the party, right? There's this one dude. Let me flashback. There's this one dude who's like, yeah, they don't have KC barbecue in Japan, right? And Jake's like, hey, no chronic heart disease either. So one of the guys is like kind of making like jokes to kind of minimize Japan. They're not like super offensive jokes, but they're kind of just like, you know, they're not like the best jokes. And Jake's just kind of firing back, but he's firing back and defending Japan in a manner where like nobody's getting offended. Everyone's just kind of like enjoying Jake's company. And then Jake tells him a little bit about Japan. He says like, look, in Japan, there are clubs where men who want to get groped by women, like on the subway car, like that's their fantasy. Like there are clubs that look like subway cars where if you're a guy, you just go there and then you like women apparently grope you. I had no idea this is the case. I'm not saying that's going to make me want to go to Japan more, but anyways, I plead the fifth. But anyways, yeah, Jake's running the party. He's charming everyone. Everything seems great. His family seems lovely. All right. Later on that night, Jake is just kind of, you know, hanging out. The party's kind of starting to die down a little bit. He's just sipping on a beer. And he ends up having this like little philosophical conversation with this one of his dad's friends. And like, I think this guy's name is like Kudish or something. He's got a job at like the Dean Kudish, right? He's got a job at the St. Louis Dispatch. He's a senior editor. So this dude is like, you know, pretty legit in the newspaper field. Like it's definitely a guy that you would want to know. And he talks to Jake, and he basically like they just get into this philosophical debate of like, is Jake really running away for a reason, right? Like this guy is basically saying, look, like I know 2 types of people in the journalism field, right? There were the guys who couldn't wait to go home because they didn't really give a fuck about it and it was just a job to them. And then there are the guys who let their job take over their life, right? And he's basically just cautioning against that. Like, don't be that second person, the person who's like running away to just, you know, because they can't really just handle like dealing with their own issues, dealing with their own demons, right? Like don't lose who you are. Don't forget about the people that matter to you because you're gonna need them someday. So he's kind of the older guy giving Jake some advice, and then at the end he says like, look, if you ever come back home and you need a job, hit me up. And by the way, it's important to know that this dude also reads the English version of the Macho, so he's read Jake's work, and he specifically says, look, I read your work about the motorcycle gang that he did, the expose that he did on the motorcycle gang, and he really loved Jake's work. So he does like Jake's work, and Jake is a talented journalist in this fucking story, right? Speaking of the Macho, back at the Macho, I forget what it's pronounced, but Emmy, right, she first gets a call from the dude that she's been dating. Remember they had the dinner last episode with Emmy's brother, and Emmy's brother fucking hated the guy, and it really shattered Emmy's heart. So the guy calls and is like, hey, like, how's, did your brother, enjoy dinner? And Emmy's like, yeah, he liked you. She's just kind of lying. It's really, really sad scene. But then the guy is like, hey, yo, by the way, like, don't forget, there is a mole in your fucking office. You still got to investigate that. And obviously, like, we know that it's probably that dude Baku, right? Like Emmy's boss. So, like, the dude, he seems like a good guy, right? The guy that Emmy's dating. And it does remind Emmy, look, I have a responsibility to make sure that if someone at the Macho or the Macho, I gotta fucking know how this is pronounced. Someone at the Macho is a mole and is corrupt. Like, I gotta expose that. Like, that's journalistic integrity. Like, so what she does is she calls fucking Tintin, Kurihara, to do some internal digging. And clearly the file that she hands Tintin is a file on Baku, right? So she tells Tintin, like, don't tell anybody shit, right? And I want you to track everything that Baku's been doing. Just, like, basically dig deep on Baku. And look, Tintin's been a fucking prick this entire season. He's been super jealous of Jake. He's just been annoying, but this is Tintin's chance to earn some points with Emmy, right? And if they do expose Baku and Emmy ends up like taking over, then Tintin's gonna have a nice little come up. So this is Tintin's chance to do some real work and not fuck this shit up. Anyways, yeah, Tintin's big chance. Okay, so we cut back to Missouri, right? And it's the ending of the party. Dude, this scene I thought was really fucking well done. They do like the family slideshow where they're showing like all these photos. It's very heartwarming. And then when the slideshow is over, Jake's dad is supposed to go up to give a speech, right? I think his name is Eddie. So Eddie Adelstein. And he's kind of so choked up with emotion that he can't speak. So then Jake's mom's like, go help him. So Jake goes up and he gives this amazing fucking speech, basically like honoring his dad, right? Like he's basically like, look, my dad taught me that it's okay to get lost in my work, especially if my work involves people. It's a great lesson. So it's fucking awesome. It's fucking awesome that Jake does that. And look, it's like he seems to have a really cool dad, and he seems to have a great relationship with his dad, right? So then at the end, he ends his speech like by saying his dad has a great big heart, and he's just proud to be his dad's son. Like, I mean, it's just such an incredible moment, right? Fucking tears in my eyes, emotional scene, but it like, jokes aside, like, so far, I haven't seen any reason for Jake to fucking hate his family. Or, like, not hate his family. He doesn't hate his family, but you know what I'm saying. Like, for Jake to be so annoyed by his family. Like, his family seems like a super tight-knit family. Yeah, his younger sister has mental health issues, so that obviously, like, there's going to be some bad that comes with, the ups and downs that she's going to experience. But by all accounts, his parents seem like they're very supportive and very loving. And his dad's making good money. He's doing well. Like, I don't see what the issue is. Back to Tokyo, Samantha is dealing with insurance, and anyone who's had to deal with insurance knows that insurance fucking sucks ass, right? Like, if you are owed an insurance payout, they're gonna do everything in their power to drag their feet. They don't want to fucking pay you, right? And they're gonna try to pay you as little as they can, right? Insurance is just a slimy fucking industry. But Sam, she's at her club, and she just, she's like, hey, how long do you think it'll take to get the insurance money? And the dude's like, at least 3 months. Good fucking luck. And she's basically screwed because what's she going to do? She can't run the club, right? She's got to fix up the club, and she's got a lot of girls that she's responsible for. So without the insurance money, like, her business is kind of wrecked, right? So tough. And then she actually, I think that's the architects who died, right? He got shot in that shootout. He died, but I think she ends up grabbing the architect's briefcase, like, to comfort her. So turns out that she really did like the architect. Okay, the party is over now in Missouri, and Jake and his dad have some father-son time, right? And they kind of start talking about Jake's sister. Her name is Jessica. And look, remember at the beginning of the episode, the promise that Jake made his sister. He said, look, I know you got an interview for Journalism Club. I will fucking be there. I'll be there. You know what I mean? So he gives his sister the promise, and his dad's just basically like, look, man, like if you promise Jessica this, then you really have to show up because this is going to really matter to her. And it means a lot. Like, oh, and he also says recently that Jessica was in the hospital, right? So there was a scene from an earlier episode where Jake called and then no one at his house was available. And I think it's implied that they were all at the hospital, hanging with Jessica. So Jessica was in the hospital for 3 weeks because she suffered like a depressive episode. So it got really bad. It seems like it's kind of, getting a little bit better, but Jake's dad says, look, you gotta fucking be there for her this time. It matters a lot. And, then they start talking about, like, Jake being happy, right? And his dad's like, look, like, I think someday, like, you could have a family. Like, you could be really happy. Like, I'm super proud to call you my son. And Jake's like, look, but I'm happy in Japan. I'm happy in Japan. And then the counter that Jake's dad said is, look, I get that you're happy in Japan, but it's all the way over there. It's on the other fucking side of the world. Like, we can't be with you. We can't see you be happy, right? It's important to note that this is in, the late 90s. So, like, you don't have, like, social media. You don't have FaceTime. Like, it's not that easy to connect with people. So his dad's like, look, we just feel distant from you because you're literally on the other side of the fucking planet. And Jake's like, look, yeah, we don't know because we're not a part of it, right? That's what his dad says. And Jake says, look, I want to change that. So I don't know how Jake plans on changing that. Maybe he wants to invite his family over to Japan. Maybe he wants to try to visit and come back home to Missouri a bit more. But by all accounts, it seems like, Jake wants to be, more connected to his family because he comes home and realizes that his family really fucking loves him. Like, damn it, Jake. Anyways, speaking of family problems, right? Sato and Kaito, right? So Sato and Kaito are just kind of doing their normal, like, cooking, all the stuff that the Yakuza have to do. And Sato's, like, basically telling Kaito, look, man, like, Hayama is a piece of shit. He has no honor. Like, you gotta stay the fuck away from this guy. Don't look up to this guy. But there is, like, while they're talking, one of the other members of the Chiharakai kind of looks up. So it's kind of hinted that that dude was listening to their conversation and eavesdropping. So Sato notices this and he calls Kaito over to a more private area and basically, like, tells him, look, when we were supposed to go get guns, when Ashita was still alive, right? And when Oyaban told us to go get guns, like, from a former Chiharakai brother named Ota, Hayama got fucking hammered and killed the dude. He killed the dude. Like, he's a loose cannon. So what does then Sato tell Kaito? Look, let me go back, actually. He says, if I find a way to get you out of this fucking life, if I find a way to get you out of Chiharakai, get you out of the Yakuza, promise me that you'll take that chance and get the fuck out. And to his credit, Kaito says, yes, I will. Oh, another important thing, Andrew Chang says, why was Sato so dumb and careless there? Dude, I completely agree. Like, so stupid, especially because we know that Hayama wants any reason to fucking kill Sato or fuck with Sato. Like, you cannot be speaking and talking shit about Hayama, especially since he's the boss right now, in the fucking, like, lunchroom, right? Like, it was just really stupid by Sato. One of the few moments where he's super careless and it's gonna cost him. Another thing to mention is that Hayama initially in the previous episode lied to Kaito. He said that, look, Tozawa is after Sato next, and that's kind of how he got Kaito revved up enough to go try to kill Tozawa. So Sato tells Kaito, look, Tozawa never gives a fuck about me. He never wanted me dead. So now he kind of, like, Kaito knows, like, look, Hayama really is a piece of fucking shit. All right, back to Katagiri and Nagata, and this is why Nagata has to be the mole. She has to be the fucking mole, because earlier, right, when Katagiri found the gun, he told Nagata on the phone, it's just us. We're the only two who are going to take the witness to the courthouse to get his statement. And on the way over, two shooters on motorbikes come through and fucking kill the witness. So now the witness is dead. And it's pretty clear who the mole is. Samantha, this storyline's a little bit played out, but let's just cover it real quick. Remember, her name is now exposed in the papers for being the owner of the club where the shooting happened, where Rashida died. So, look, it's obviously going to cause a lot of publicity because it's like, who's this white woman who owns this club, and who's this like Yakuza boss lady, right? So it's just causing a lot of gossip. And while she's out trying to talk to another girl that she used to work with, and she's trying to like figure out a place for her girls to work at. Like, she's trying to do the right thing and take care of her girls and find a temporary place for them to work at while she like works to get the insurance money. In the middle of this conversation, like fucking, reporters swarm, like paparazzi basically swarm and just start blasting her with photos and shit like that. So she's got to run. So she's in a tough spot right now. It's like she can't even show her face. The aftermath of the shooting and killing of the witness, like Katagiri and Nagata are kind of talking, and I don't know if Katagiri suspects Nagata yet or if he's not showing it yet. But the Nagata says something where she's like, "Hey, have you turned in the gun?" Yo, appreciate the super chat, man. Really appreciate the super chat. Yeah, Samantha fucking sucks. I hope that she can redeem herself, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in this episode on what she can do to redeem herself, because there is a fucking scumbag who needs to get the shit kicked out of him or just die, and we will touch on that later on in the episode. But back to Katagiri and Nagata. Yo, this shit's crazy because Nagata says, "Hey, what'd you do with the gun? Have you turned in the gun with evidence yet?" And Katagiri says, like, he basically hasn't turned in the gun. Now, like, if Nagata is the mole, she's going to have to find a way to get that gun and make that gun disappear. But anyways, later on that night, they're kind of going through the tapes on Tozawa's phone because they've tapped all of his phones, and they're just looking for any sort of evidence that could help them build their case on Tozawa. And they hear this voicemail, right, from an English speaker, right? It's a nurse from the Southern Minnesota Medical Center. I think that's what it is. And she's basically like, "Hey, like, there's an outstanding invoice due." There's a Marge from Southern Minnesota Medical Center. "There's an outstanding invoice due for Mr. Tanaka's surgery. We know that Tozawa went to the U.S. to go get that liver transplant, and it seems like he didn't pay the fucking bill." So it's actually pretty funny. But that tape, right, like what they find in that tape confirms that somehow Tozawa found a way to get to the U.S. because Tozawa was on the no-fly list. Like, he wasn't supposed to be allowed to leave the country, but we know that he's got one of the politicians in his fucking hand, right, which is how he got out of the country. And now we got to find out how the fuck was he able to get a liver transplant. But it is an important piece of evidence. Hey, as Andrew mentioned earlier, Sato being dumb, it comes back to bite him in the ass because obviously one of the members of Chiharakai, the dude who was listening, snitches and tells Hayama, "Look, Sato said you have no you have no honor." So what does Hayama do? He gets the entire fucking family out, basically punches Sato in the gut, and I think Sato would kick the shit out of Hayama in a one-on-one battle, but Hayama knows that he can use Sato's brother Kaito as leverage. So he whispers to Sato, like, "Look, I'm going to fucking kill your brother if you don't listen to what I tell you to do." So Sato, there's nothing Sato can do. He has to kind of just fall back and let Hayama like bitch him around. And he banishes Sato. So look, I'll say this. I thought he was going to try to kill Sato right then and there, but he actually banishes Sato. And also another important thing to mention, I think the dude's name is Gem, right? Gem is one of the members who stabbed Sato up and tried to kill Sato out of jealousy at the end of season 1, right? Eventually he gets caught and exposed, and when Sato recovers, Ishida's basically like, "Sato, you killed Gem," and Sato spares Gem's life, right? And by sparing Gem's life, it made Gem extremely loyal to Sato. So right here in this scene, you see Gem, he almost like goes and puts his hands on Hayama, which would have been fucking crazy. So Gem is not happy. Like, he really has love for Sato now. And Hayama banishes Sato and basically makes him do the walk of shame out of the building. And you see Gem, like, Gem is heartbroken because he owes that man his life. And Gem tries to walk out with him, but the other Yakuza members stop Gem. I would love to see some sort of like redemption arc with Gem because he still hasn't done enough to justify Sato like sparing his life, essentially. So he's gotta do something to make up for him almost fucking killing Sato. But those scenes right there do show you that Gem has genuine love for Sato. So Gem obviously wasn't the mole, and Sato has at least one person within Chiharakai who's fiercely loyal to him. And it's ironically the dude who almost fucking killed him. All right, these next scenes are hard to break down, man. Like I was so fucking mad at Jake and Katagiri during these scenes. Like I genuinely was fucking pissed. He was so fucking annoying. Um, Jake is chilling with his fam. Like everything with his fam seems fine, and Katagiri immediately calls Jake and is basically like, "Yo, we found out that Tozawa was at the Southern Minnesota Medical Center. It's 90 minutes away from St. Louis. You need to go there now." Katagiri is like he's being an asshole in these scenes. I understand his sense of urgency because he knows that there's a mole within the station, so he's got to move quick. But man, it fucking sucks to just see like Jake end up blowing up his family over this. So what does Jake do? Right? Jake immediately gets his suit on. He's like, "Yo, I'm going to Minnesota." He's gonna just try to find some information, and he's got that interview with his sister's journalism club, right? So he's got that shit that he promised her that he would do, and she's like, "Are you gonna be back for that?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll be back for that. I'll be back for that." We all know he's not gonna be back for that. But on another important nugget to note is that Jake's dad is like pretty well connected. So he's like, "Yo, I know some of the people who are like the head of hepatology, which is like anything associated with the liver. Like I know the head of that. Like I can make some calls and get you in touch with some of the docs, which is really really important." Okay, yeah, I said earlier I was going to talk about Samantha having a chance to have a redemption arc. And in season one, Samantha was saving up all of the money that she made from working at the club to open up her own club. And she had a lot of guap saved up. The issue is she was hiding it in her fucking cupboard, right? Like shit got stolen. Long story short, she tried to use that money to go, get Paulina and free Paulina. But it turns out that this fuckboy, I think his name is like Akira, right? Akira basically and some goons robbed Samantha of her money. Like that's basically the dirty summary of what happened in in season one. So Samantha lost all of her money, and she was just being careless and naive, right? But as Samantha is just drinking by herself, feeling sorry for herself, she fucking sees Akira, right? In quick background on Akira. Akira is basically a pretty boy. So from what I understand, like in these clubs in Japan, you have like pretty women being hostesses, and they're supposed to like entertain gentlemen and get them to buy bottles. But you also have like the male version, so he's supposed to like be so charming and attractive and stuff that you have women going out to spend money as well. So like Akira is a charmer, and he's obviously very popular with the ladies, but we find out that he's now no longer a host, but he's now a TV personality. And look at this fucking asshole. Like he says like, "Yeah, the jewelry and the clothes, it's enough to buy a luxury car." And Samantha's just watching this, right? She's watching this motherfucker who robbed her on TV, right? And yeah, he's just a real piece of shit. So I'll say this: Samantha's chance for redemption is going to be if she can figure out a way to get Sato to beat the fuck out of this dude and take all of his money. He's got to get embarrassed. Honestly, if they killed this dude, I wouldn't even be upset. I'd be pumped. All right, back to Jake. So Jake pulls up to the Southern Minnesota Medical Center, and the dude's name is Dr. Walker. And Jake knows what this man did. Jake knows that this man performed the surgery on fucking Tozawa, but he's got to be a little bit like he's got to figure out the right way to come at it to get that information right. So at first, like he's just kind of asking setup questions, right? Setup questions that allow Dr. Walker to keep digging his own grave. So at first he's like, "Look, man, like, do you guys treat foreign nationals?" And the dude's like, nah, we only treat U.S. citizens." Okay, all right. Already, like that's pretty bad because Tozawa is a foreign national. And then he asks, like, "All right, what's the average wait time for a liver?" Right? And he goes like 5 years. And then he also asks the doctor, "Look, what percentage of the patients on your wait list die before getting a liver transplant?" And the doc says 10%. So it's pretty grim if you're on that list, right? And as they're talking, Jake notices a very, very expensive watch on the doc's wrist. And look, I'll say this, man. Docs make a lot of money, but unless you're running your own clinic and stuff like that, anyone who has doctor friends know, typically they have a shit ton of debt. Like they have like $300,000 worth of debt. And unless you're running your own private practice, you're not making that much money. And you're definitely not making enough money to just splurge on like $300,000 watches. So it's an important thing to note. So Jake catches that, and he's like, "Hey, that's a pretty nice watch. It's a, Constantine, Vacheron Constantine. I don't know, man. I'm not a watch guy because I just don't have enough money to be getting watches like that." But Jake notices the watch, and he basically tells the doc, like, "Look, man, I know that watch was from a high-level gangster. I can write two stories. I can write a story saying, you're a great doc, or I can write a story like basically pointing out how sketchy you're being and how do you have that watch. And even if Jake's story doesn't result in Dr. Walker going to jail, it can destroy his reputation. And in the medical field, right, your reputation is everything. So even if he doesn't like face actual legal repercussions, which he would if they dug deep, just his reputation going down the fucking drain would kill his career. So what does the doc do? He folds, right? He obviously going to tell Jake everything that he knows. I gotta say, Jake doing this though puts his entire family at risk because the doc knows Jake's dad, or he at least knows somebody who knows Jake's dad. So like, what do you think the doc's gonna do? He's clearly gonna tell Tozawa like what just happened. So now Jake's just put his entire family at risk. Jake obviously reports back to Katagiri about what he found, and this is actually pretty funny. So Tozawa used Spencer Tanaka as his fucking name. Like, Spencer is just a fucking hilarious name for Tozawa to choose. But basically, like, Jake tells Katagiri, like, this is what happened, right? Tozawa was able to somehow bypass the no-fly list. And that's more on the officials from Japan, right? Like, that's one of their officials is corrupt. But Tozawa was able to bypass that list, and he pulled up with all of his goons, and somehow he was able to jump the list for the liver transplant. So the second a match became available, Tozawa jumped to the front of the line, got the transplant, and the second they were done with the transplant, he gives Dr. Walker a $250,000 watch. Now this is what, 1999 or something like that. So you adjust that for inflation, like we're looking at, what? My math is bad, but like $700,000, $800,000, some shit like that. Basically, like Dr. Walker got a fucking bag for doing this surgery. So I guess like in a way, Tozawa didn't really like skirt his bills. He paid. He just didn't. He can't pay like he can't leave a paper trail, right? So he just paid with the watch because he doesn't want to leave a paper trail. So knowing that information, Katagiri now is like, oh shit, I got everything, right? So what does Katagiri do? This pissed me off with what Katagiri did. He pressures Jake to return to Japan immediately. He's like, look, you got to come back right away. Jake's like, dude, I got 4 more days here. And all Jake had to do was wait one day, do your sister's fucking journalism club thing so she doesn't like have another depressive episode. Keep your family somewhat intact. Yes, they'll be mad if you leave, with 3 days left, but still, you could have waited one day, man. One day. Doesn't matter. Jake's all about his job. And he wants to stay for a day, but Katagiri's like, I need you in Tokyo now. So Katagiri like kind of just goes nuts and pressures Jake to come back, and he does. And this scene was so fucking heartbroken, dude. I got to shout out. I don't know who this actor is, but this dude did a really good job in this entire fucking episode. Yeah, Jake. Oh yeah. That's a good call, man, dude. Andrew, I gotta go rewatch some of season 1. There's like a lot of important nuggets that I missed, but Jake clearly has an eye and he's a very observant dude. Also, remember that in season 1, Andrew says Andrew points out that in season 1, Jake also complimented Tozawa's watch when he first walked by him in the restaurant. So I do like that parallel. And also, this is now bringing us to the opening scene of season 1. So the opening scene of season 1 shows Jake and Katagiri like meeting with Tozawa's entire group, and basically Tozawa's like, I'll kill your entire fucking family, like kill everyone if you don't, if you publish this story. So we're now building up towards that, like towards finishing that scene out at the end of season 2, which is really cool. It shows that they put in a lot of work on the show. But back to this scene, man. This scene is heartbreaking because it's just like Jake's dad, shout out to the dude who plays him, because he acts this scene out without anyone on the other line, right? Like when he's acting this, he's just kind of running these lines solo. But Jake basically says, look, I'm going to Tokyo. So Jake flies directly from Minnesota to Dallas to then go to Tokyo. So he will not be attending his sister's journalism club thing. And his dad's like, look, you're always making things more urgent than your family. And even though he's pissed and his dad knows this is going to wreck his sister, he still ends the call with be safe. And he's like heartbroken. So it's just tough, man. Like Katagiri, Jake, not great episodes for these guys. But yeah, we're going to see what the aftermath is of that. we end the episode with fucking Hayama calling a hit out on just like, this is such a pointless fucking thing to do, but basically like the Chihara send two goons, one of which is Kaito. So Kaito's not really a goon. He's just a school, he's just a fucking student. But they pull up to a known like Tozawa like affiliated club hangout. They end up killing one of the dudes. Kaito is too scared to shoot and kill the other dude, so he's kind of just like pointing the gun at him and not knowing what to do. And then when the other dude pulls out his gun, Kaito shoots, but he only hits the dude in the shoulder, so he doesn't kill the dude, right? So then they sprint away, and this is interesting. You see the dude like start shooting at them, and he kills a fucking innocent bystander. Like this scene's actually insane. Like, watch this real quick, right? So he survives, gets shot in the shoulder, so he's a non-lethal. They start sprinting away, and as this dude's shooting, he fucking catches a bystander and just fucking kills a bystander. And then remember the sneakers that Kaito got. I don't know what the importance of that is gonna be. Like, is it gonna be used to like identify him as one of the shooters? But Kaito ends up like sprinting on a bus and going away. But those sneakers are very recognizable. And that's basically how the episode ends. So yeah, man, like overall crazy fucking episode. I'll say this, like Katagiri is in a tough spot because his partner Nagata is probably fucking dirty. And if she's dirty, he has to keep everything away from her, right? And she technically like has more power than him, so she could kind of force him to do things. So I want to know what Katagiri's plan is once Jake comes back, how he's going to prevent Nagata from intervening and basically fucking him. And also, let's not forget that Tozawa's people threatened Katagiri's family. So like there was a scene earlier in this season where like basically pictures of Katagiri's daughters were put on his windshield, right? Basically implying like, yeah, we know where your daughters are at. We could kill your family at any fucking moment. You got to pull back. So he actually did pull back, but now he's back in. So like he's risking not just his own life. I don't think he cares about his own life. He's risking his entire family's life, like pushing this investigation through. So that it's going to be crazy to see how that unfolds. It's also going to be crazy to see what the aftermath is of Jake's sister, right? Like she's got to feel heartbroken. Jake's a fucking asshole. He's a bad brother. Like he honestly is just a bad brother. And it's also funny. I loved. This isn't funny, but I actually loved how they did this. I was expecting Jake's family to be so shitty, like because all we get from season 1 and basically the first half of season 2 is like Jake just like being like, oh, my family is so annoying. They always want me to come back, blah, 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 blah. So you're kind of like, all right, like maybe Jake has a reason for not liking his family and being annoyed at his family. And then when he goes back home, we see that like his family is like a pretty loving family, like, and they genuinely care about the dude. And yeah, they want the dude to stay in Missouri, and they have more of like a small town mindset, but like they seem like a good family. So I actually love how they did that, where it's like, yo, Jake is actually the problem. The problem isn't Jake's family. The problem is fucking Jake. So I loved how they showed that in this episode. And then a bit on Sato, man. Like, look, Sato is too nice of a guy to be in the Yakuza, right? Like he's really a good dude. But look, the Chihara, if they're led by Hayama, they're done. Let me actually go back to that whole fucking Chihara scene. This was so pointless because if you really think about like the grand scheme of things, you know that the cops are under a no tolerance, zero tolerance policy with all of the Yakuza families, right? That's why they got rid of that other dude from a few episodes earlier, right? They disbanded that entire clan. So any sort of violence is basically going to like result in your entire fucking gang being thrown in jail. You're going to be in prison. So if you're going to strike, right, you might as well make sure when you strike, you actually kill Tozawa. Shooting and killing one of his goons and like injuring one of his other goons does absolutely nothing. It does absolutely nothing. And now all that's going to happen is it looks like you struck against them, right? So the cops are going to have an excuse to come in and basically put all of you guys in jail. And on top of that, the other families, right? The other Yakuza families are going to be like, wow, that was unprovoked. Because even if they know that Tozawa called the hit, there's no evidence connecting Tozawa to Ishida's hit right now. So Tozawa could be like, I didn't do it. I have my alibi. They just attacked us unprovoked. So now you're going to like basically Hayama's putting the Chihara not only against the cops, but he's now putting them against all of the remaining families. So it's going to be bad. I am curious to see what happens with Sato. Does Samantha try to get Sato to fucking fuck up Akira and get money from Akira, maybe extort Akira? Like, it would be pretty simple, right? Like, all you got to do is just find him. Now she knows that he's a TV personality, so she can find him. And then if you find him, you just beat the fuck out of him and just take whatever he has. Like, go in his house and just take all of his shit, take all of his cash. The dude clearly has a cash stash somewhere. So that's how she could get back at Akira and get the money and get her club back and running. Samantha is an annoying ass fucking character, but you got to have characters that you also don't like in the show. And then as for Sato, like, is he going to somehow find a way to take over the Chihara? We know that Kaito is going to be loyal to him within the Chihara, but he's really trying to get Kaito out of the fucking, the life. So it's really Gem. Like, let's see if Gem can somehow, like, find a way to get Sato back in, where Sato takes over as the new Oyabon because he actually cares about his people and figures out a way to get Hayama the fuck up out of there. I gotta say one thing though, the actor who plays Hayama, like, I did some research on him. Apparently he's known as like a bad boy actor in Japan. That dude crushes the role. You could see his eyes, they're just black inside, like so fucking dead inside. Does such a great job. But look, I've gone for 50 minutes. That's going to do it. Appreciate you, Andrew, for pulling up. Appreciate the super chat. I got to find a way to start displaying the chats and the notifications on the stream, but I'm still new to this shit. I will be streaming episode 8, or I'll do a live stream on episode 8 next week. Me and Damon are also covering House of the Dragon, so we're in the middle of that. That's going to be, our regular videos where we put in like all the clips and stuff like that. And then we're also covering Shogun. So right now the 2 best shows that I'm watching are all Japanese shows, bro. Shogun is absolute fucking fire. We've been live streaming that. Our last stream for Shogun, I'm not gonna lie, the audio was kind of ass. I'm still figuring it out. There's like some echo when Damon talks, but we're gonna get that cleaned up, I promise, for episode 5. But other than that, I gotta run. It's Friday. Get fucked up, hang out with your friends. I will catch y'all later.